Okay, hi. My name is Erwin, and I'm a product manager for Nokia, and I focus on our data center solution, mainly around SR Linux, our network operating system, and some of our automation toolset as well. Today, I wanted to do mostly a demo. I have a single slide to show you guys in a second here, and then we'll jump straight into a demo. And we'll be talking about kind of the hot topic of the year, generative AI, and what we've done with that, and try to integrate that with SR Linux, our network operating system. So we'll go through my one slide. Just want to talk about what I'll be doing. I'm going to try to do a live demo. So we all need fingers crossed for the live demo gods today, please. We will be building a demo from scratch. So I'm going to start off with absolutely nothing deployed, and I'll be using some of the tools that we heard about today from Roman with Container Lab. I'll build up my topology. And then I'm going to install this new application in SR Linux. So SR Linux is our network operating system. And one of the key aspects of it is that it's highly extensible and open. And part of what that means is that we allow you to install applications on the switch, but not just install applications and have them running in Linux in the background. It actually integrates natively into the operating system in such a way that the applications themselves are available and configurable via the normal CLI, as you'd be used to configuring BGP and OSPF. Additionally, all the configuration, as well as any potential state that I may want to expose to my application, can be exposed using all the same northbound interfaces as the rest. So the stuff we saw with Kareem with GNMIC, you'd be able to extract data for this application if you wanted to. So I'll go through the process of what it looks like to install an application on one of our switches. And then finally, we'll get to some more fun aspects of it and seeing how AI can potentially help us in the network operating system space. And we'll start chatting with our friendly AI assistant, who I hope is in a good mood today and will be cooperative. But I'm going to grab this chair and just hop into a demo. Okay. So firstly, I don't have anything deployed. My lab is not deployed, but I will be using a Container Lab example that I just pulled down from the public Container Lab GitHub repo. So nothing special about it. I did a git pull on Container Lab. There's a whole bunch of examples there already which you can use, and I'm just using the example called close to, right, which is going to spin up a topology with some leafs, some spines, some super spines, and some clients, right? So first step, let me get a topology up and running so we can start the demo, right? So sudo clab deploy my topology, and this is my topology definition. I won't go through it, but you'll see it spin up here. Deploy topology close to. Okay, so same topology, same example. I was just in the wrong machine. This time, we hope it works. Oh no. Okay. Okay, there we go. So, all right, finally we got it. Okay, so it's just spinning up my topology as expected. So it's a bit of a larger topology. It's got a bunch of nodes, as I said, leaf spines, super spines. We'll give it a second here to keep deploying. So again, step one is build my topology. And like I said, you can pull this down. And as Roman showed earlier, the topology was built. It gives me a summary of all the IPs I can connect to. And I'm going to just decide to connect to leaf 1. So I can just connect to leaf 1. And this is running SR Linux, right? So this is our network operating system that we run in our switches and routers. And I'm going to show you that right now there's a missing prompt that I'm going to hopefully get after I install my application. But I don't have this prompt called Ask AI, which is a new prompt that we'll get in a second. So I just wanted to show you that it doesn't exist. I'm trying to tab complete. It doesn't exist. Question mark. It doesn't show up, right? So what I want to do now is I want to install this new application in my switch so I can enhance the capability and bring some new functionality. In my case, I want to bring a little AI assistant on board. So I'm just going to just do a basic install. I'll copy my command here. Make my life easier. So my command is I'm basically just doing a yum install of the application, right? So we have a repo that's hosted where we hosted the application, and I'm just going to yum install it. While it's installing, everything that I'm doing here, you can also do yourselves. There's nothing that I'm doing in this environment that is not something that's freely available for you guys to do. You could do this right after the session. Nothing I'm doing here is proprietary or special. You can use Container Lab. You can use the SR Linux container image for free, download, use it. And the application I'm installing, we also release for free. So you can also download and install this nice little AI assistant and play with it if you want to as well.
What sort of memory and CPU you have on this VM where you're running the lab?
This particular one, I mean, this server is pretty big because it's one of my build machines at work. So it's pretty beefy. Like I mean, 120 gigs of RAM, maybe, I think a 32 core processor, but I did the demo. You can do this demo on a laptop. It just means that topology could be smaller. I happened to pick a larger topology just because I could, but you could use a 3-node topology if you wanted to run on your laptop and do exactly what I'm doing here, but on your laptop as well if you want.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so it installed the application. I'm just going to reload my CLI so it picks up on the new prompt. So now you'll see if I do an Ask AI tab, it tab completes and I have 2 new prompts, right? So again, I just installed my application and directly integrated into my CLI and now have 2 new prompts, right?
Rowan, can I interrupt you for a question? Sorry, I'm not familiar with SR Linux.
Yeah.
This may be a thing that someone more familiar with the operating system
Sure.
would know, but you did just pull it from a repo. Is that like, so the operating system itself, the NOS itself, has a list of repos that you can just hit, or did you configure that as part of the lab to do that?
Yeah, I configured that
Okay.
that repo, so you can see enable repo SR Linux. So I added the repo beforehand, but we have the instructions for you to add the correct repo to pull that application as well.
I got you. And that repo has to be essentially something that you all are hosting on the Nokia side, or can I point it to like, I mean, like, is this really just Linux? I could
It's Linux. You can point it to anything. You can point it to anything.
Okay.
In fact, for the demo, it was like trying to update all the cache for my for this particular version is running a CentOS in the background.
Okay.
I'm just trying to update the repos from that, and it's just taking too long. So I disabled all that. But
Okay.
you could point it to any repo you want. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
The AI behind this, is this what's the actual AI behind it?
Okay, so let's get to it right now. It's a good question. So what it is in this particular case, let's configure it so you'll get a chance to see it. In this demo, I'm going to use OpenAI, so I'm going to use GPT. You can configure the application to use either GPT-4 or 3.5, depending on what you want to use.
Mm-hmm.
There are parameters to configure the application to talk to other models. So if you had an on-prem version of Llama 2, whatever, 70 billion parameter model, you could also do that. For this demo, I'm going to use GPT-4.
Okay.
Just because, and we found that GPT-4 tends to give you the best results. And there is a difference in what you get in terms of accuracy based on GPT-5, 4, or even the other models that you can point to. Yeah.
So the API key that you flashed on the screen, you're going to kill
I'm
that?
going to use it and kill it as soon as the demo's over.
Just checking.
Yeah, don't worry.
Oh, no, I'm not worried.
It's a temporary one. It's got a limit and it's temporary, so it's...
Okay.
Let's be on that if you'd like.
Yeah. You're welcome to try it after this talk. Okay, so I'm configuring my Ask AI server, which is my AI assistant. I'm decided I want to use GPT-4. I'm going to turn dynamic state to true, and I'll talk a bit more about what that is earlier. Roman alluded to it earlier in his talk, and that we were able to not only ask questions about documentation and configuration, but we can look at state. That's disabled by default, so you have to enable that, which I just did. And then we'll put my my super secret Open API key in there that you guys aren't writing down and pausing the video for.
That's what screen capture's for.
Correct.
That's what screen capture's for.
Yeah, exactly.
Type that, OCR.
Okay, so I've configured it all now. So now I hopefully will have an Ask AI system which I can ask questions to. Now, the very first time you run this, we're going to flash up terms and conditions you have to accept. Our legal team was very keen on making sure that you didn't blame us if the configuration that was generated was incorrect or it got the wrong answer. So I'm going to ask it a very simple question just to get past that stage. Okay, so yes, I've read all that and I've agreed, of course. And it's able to answer the question now. So it's telling me it's SR Linux and network operating system. So let me clear the screen again. And let's get into some of the use cases where these assistants are kind of useful or can be kind of useful. One of the primary use cases is an ability for it to answer questions about parameters in a system. Maybe you're new to SR Linux, since you may not have used SR Linux in the past. You don't know the CLI potentially. Maybe you're new to a particular protocol. You want to get some information about it. So you can navigate around. So I'm going to head to protocol BGP. Default. Oh, sorry. Network as a default protocol BGP. Maybe I'm looking through here at all the different parameters, and maybe I'm not familiar with, let's say, graceful restart, right? Maybe I'm learning about graceful restart in BGP, and maybe I'm not familiar with how to configure an SR Linux. So you could say, inline in the CLI, you could say, Ask AI, can you explain to me how graceful restart works and provide a configuration example? So what it's doing now is it's going to give me some information about it. So I didn't have to context switch out to go to Google what graceful restart is, get all vendors' implementation of it. I didn't have to go to my Nokia documentation and do a search for graceful restart. right in line, right in context in my lab, in my CLI. I can ask it about it. And the thing you'll notice here is it's actually contextualizing it within SR Linux. So it's not going and figuring out from what its current knowledge is today, which, to be fair, if you go to ChatGPT, you probably won't get very much on SR Linux because SR Linux is fairly new. So the content on SR Linux and GPT as it is not very high. So you probably won't get a very accurate answer for SR Linux. You'll probably get other vendors' implementation of it. But what you're getting here is actually very specific to SR Linux. Not only is it specific to how we describe graceful restart in context of BGP, but it's actually giving you configuration examples. And then it decided, I didn't ask it, but I could have been more specific. It decided to give me the answer in JSON and CLI set commands, which as a CLI user, I'd probably more useful for me to look at the CLI set commands, but if you wanted to look at JSON, you could. And that's accurate configuration, right? So I can tell you as a user of SR Linux that what it gave me here is actually accurate, and that's how I would configure graceful restart in BGP, right? So that's the first thing you can do, which we find is pretty useful for someone who's new to either the operating system or new to potentially a protocol or so on and so forth, right?
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Sorry, up there it says you can configure it for this instance or somewhere in the output.
Yeah.
Sorry, right there. Yep, you can configure graceful restart for this BGP instance. So is that, it's actually telling you this device can support the feature that you wanted to turn on that you just asked about. Is that correct?
Sort of. It's based on our documentation. So, and our documentation is pretty generic, and you could ask it on a specific device. And if the documentation had a statement saying that BGP graceful restart was supported on this device, it would come back and tell you. It's not doing that right now, though.
Gotcha.
So what it's telling you here is it's saying for the BGP instance. So it's saying for a BGP instance that I'm currently in, you can do that. But it's not actually checking whether that particular device supports it.
Gotcha.
But you could further the question and ask it, like, does this device support it? And if that's in our documentation, it will answer accordingly. Yeah.
Can it contextualize to your specific configuration that's already running on your device?
Yeah. So actually, that's a great tie into the next part of the demo. So let me answer that question with showing you how that works. So yes, so doc search, one thing, right? The other thing you can do is actually look at the configuration of the device. So you can actually probe it and ask it questions about what's running on the device, right? So let me show you how that works. So I'm going to create a new chat. So it does have the concept of new chat. So just like ChatGPT, it can contextualize a chat and it remembers things. So if I'm in a current chat with it, it remembers what I asked it before, and you can go back and ask it questions about things that you asked 4 or 5 questions ago. If you're switching topics, you typically want to switch chats because you want to make sure you contextualize in that area, right? So I'm going to switch chat to a new chat, and I'm going to ask it a question and say, is SSH allowed in the CPM filters? Now, CPM filters for us are like our management filters, right? And so it's actually now going to parse the configuration and figure out whether SSH is allowed on this device. Now, I know it is because I'm SSH into the device, but here it's telling me that yes, SSH is allowed, and it's telling me that it's entries 60 and 70, so give me additional context. And just to show you that it actually is true, I could show ACL, CPM filter, IPv4 filter, entry 60, and sure enough, that's my SSH protocol, right? So it's able to answer questions about the configuration, and it can contextualize answers based on the actual running configuration of the device.
Can it generate suggested configurations based upon your current configuration?
Yes, you would have to massage the prompt. It's kind of like ChatGPT. The prompt is really important. So the answer is yes. I haven't tested it, so I wouldn't be able to guide you on the prompt, but it would be something you have to play with. But technically speaking, there's no reason it couldn't connect dots and say, okay, this is the current configuration. This is what you would need to do to change the configuration to something else, and based on the current existing configuration. Like, it should be able to do that.
Okay, so question. This is crazy cool, I think. But like, what about portions of my configuration that I would consider private or sensitive that I don't want to go up to ChatGPT to allow other people like me to go query, like, hey, what's XYZ Corp's, a key or, like API? Well, like, you get what I'm saying, right? How does this handling sensitive information that I would likely not want to expose to the rest of the world to then feed? Yeah,
so the way it works is basically you can't. So in its current in its current form, so we don't do any obfuscation or masking of data, which is actually primarily why you have to enable the dynamic data by default. So by default, if you'd installed the app and used it, you couldn't ask it questions about the config because you're not allowing it to send OpenAI. We also recommend this is really probably for labs only, and that you could run in production, but it's up to you. But we don't mask the data. It's also why we also supporting having on-prem data models. So you could, like we talked about earlier, you could technically point it to an on-prem Llama 2 instance, and it would, have a similar behavior, right?
Yeah.
Just for this demo, I'm using OpenAI, but yeah, for full disclaimer, we're not masking data as it is. It's disabled by default. You have to enable it, and you should be aware that we're not masking anything.
Yeah, but that's really cool though, because then if I have an on-prem one that I'm running against, I can have my own. It can already understand and know what I'm expecting to be the configuration. So not only can it combine it with your documentation, it can tell me, oh, hey, by the way, filter 60 doesn't actually match what you should have in place for it.
Right.
You should be doing the following.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Yeah, it opens up all sorts of opportunities. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Is Nokia gonna entertain the idea of hosting a customer-specific model?
Yeah, so we're actually looking at that right now. Where we see, this is kind of cool to see it on the device as it is, right? Like I'm doing a demo. Where we see the real usefulness is probably actually at a higher level, at the controller level, when it has visibility across the network. And in that case, we have different deployment models we're investigating. We haven't released anything yet, but one of them is an on-prem, connecting to someone else's on-prem data model. One is connecting to our hosted, Nokia hosted cloud. So think OpenAI API, but Nokia API. Or the third one is like an appliance where we'd say, okay, here's a device you run. It's like a server, and it's our model. It's trained on our information, and it's local to you. It's in your data center, but all of the devices point to it, or our controller points to it, right? We haven't yet decided what makes the most sense yet for us. Still investigating. I think technology is new enough that I think everybody in the industry is probably looking at this and trying to figure it out. But those are the models that we're looking at deploying.
Two questions.
Yeah.
So first, and again, this is because I'm not aware of the SR Linux, but I noticed that you are under the BGP hierarchy when you ask the graceful restart question.
Yeah.
So do you have to be at that hierarchy level, or you can ask the graceful restart question at any stage in the hierarchy?
You can ask it anywhere, but it's contextually aware, which is interesting. So for instance, you could be like, because I was in BGP, that's why I'd answered it because of BGP. If I had gone to the OSPF context, it actually would have known that I was in OSPF.
Okay.
And it would have answered with OSPF. So that's a great question. So the application is contextually aware. Yeah.
Okay, and the second question is, so the configuration is still static in nature, right? But can it help in any troubleshooting? Like, can you ask why did BGP select this route versus that route? And
Let's see if it can do that. I think that's my next part of the demo for you. You guys are just lining these up. It's perfect. Okay, so let's see.
No, you planned your demo well. That's what's happening.
Yeah, well, let's go with that. Okay, so new chat, new context. I'm going to ask it to summarize the health of BGP to see if there's any issues, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to say, can you summarize the health of my BGP peers? And now it's summarizing. So it's telling me that I have one currently in active state.
Oh, dang.
One is established. And it gives you a bit of information, right? So that's the first step, is there something wrong, right? But just like with any kind of chat AI, generative AI application, you can keep probing, right? So I could continue and say, well, I'm a new network engineer. Maybe I'm not a power user of SR Linux yet. I could say, are there any errors on the downed peer? Now remember, I didn't tell it which peer it was, but it's remembering that context, right? So it knows what I just asked it. And now it's telling me there's an error on the down peer with this address, and it's telling me there's a notification code, and it's telling me that the subcode was bad PRES. So now it's telling me why that is down. And I could go and fix the peer and then ask it if it was fixed, and it would come back and say, yeah, the issue is now fixed. Yeah.
All right, so it's so the first thing there kind of annoyed me. Can you summarize the health of my BGP peers? Well, it's just give me a show command. Like that's what I would need.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Absolutely.
Generous, but I mean, good example.
Yeah.
But then the second one you have in here, all right, so we're talking about the errors on there. Or can you ask it how to fix it?
I could try.
Like, can you suggest commands to resolve this?
What would happen
to fix?
Can you do my homework?
That's my next. Well, can I just ask it to deploy the fix?
Tom, I'm either asking
you could
Google or I'm asking the AI. I'm not very familiar with the operating system.
Oh, so there's just some delay to fix.
You don't need to learn SR Linux at all. You just need to know how to use, OpenAI.
But if it can show me the commands, then at least I can use it to help learn a bit more about it.
Yeah.
So here it can, but the thing is, we'll see. It's explaining to you that it can't. If you ask it a different way, sometimes it can. So let me just at least
apologize. I'm so sorry. That's better than you get with most
Google.
tech supports.
Sorry, David, I can't do that. Google just gives you an aw snap here.
Well, quoted a lot of that.
Okay, so you see,
You're not-
I changed the question, right? And now it's actually probably the answer. So it's kind of like ChatGPT, where like the prompt is important. So I was saying before, right? Like, and as the more you use it, the more you get familiar with how to ask the question.
Yeah.
So the first time I asked it was incorrect, obviously. Now I asked it slightly differently, and it's able to answer, and it's providing me with accurate configuration example on how to fix it. So again, as a new user, now I know how to fix a PRES on BGP, right?
So at some point, you
Oh, no.
be like,
It won't
yo,
actually
Peer is
fix it.
broken, fix it.
It won't fix it. Yeah, so that's something we don't do. We don't apply configuration, right? So it will suggest what you should do, right?
Right.
But it will not take that configuration, apply it. It will say, this is how you would fix the PRES, not this is us fixing the PRES, right? That's kind of the next level. For that, you need to have something a bit more complex. And also, we could get it to apply configuration. That is something that's technically doable, but I'm not too sure we want it to apply configuration
Because you
based
can't.
on that. Based on that. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that was basically it. I wanted to show you how to get started with Container Lab, spinning up an environment, how to install an application, pretty simple, and then how to play around with this AI assistant. And we feel it's very interesting for those who are new to SR Linux. Even if you're a power user and you want to find out what the show commands are, you can ask it questions like, what is the show command to view the routes in the route table? And it'll spit out the show command. So as a power user, you can get used to getting the show commands and then using it more and more, right?
Have you tried asking it to do some sort of like rudimentary analysis? Like if example would be, if I shut down this interface, how many peers will that affect? Or which peers will it affect?
I've never actually tried that, so I don't know what it would answer. I could try it.
Could you put it in?
I could try it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why not. What would be a good question? What would happen? You have to give me a scenario that's
Relevant to the one.
relevant to the topology. What would happen if I shut down interface Ethernet 1? I think this is one of the interfaces, Ethernet 1.1. What would you? I don't know. I'm trying to be try to get.
I wonder if you'll contextualize the BGP since you're in.
Yeah, well, I'll ask it. You know what? I don't know what it's going to say. Well, this is let's see what it comes back with. Yeah,
Roll the dice.
Just like network.
Comes back. Oh, don't do that.
I mean that's pretty basic. Yes, that's
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah.
It will stop working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd have to be a bit more prescriptive, I think.
Yeah, so you
This
can't.
is super cool.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah. I mean, these are things that you basically, as a user, you try these things, and then, like I said, it's not even just trying it. It's can I try and can I phrase it in such a way that I can figure it out, right? Yeah.
What is the current load that this puts on an actual piece of hardware? Is it just doing an HTTP GET?
Yeah.
Is it okay? So minimal CPU on a probably limited processor bound appliance.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, because the heavy lifting is actually done by OpenAI, right? So
Right.
it's actually really on box is very simplistic. We run a local vector database on the device. It's very small, and it doesn't use that much resources. So to answer the question, not very much resources at all. It should run on most devices. Like this is running inside a container inside my server. It's very
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that brings up my next point, which I think probably doesn't need to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. Like it means you have to either allow connectivity from a network element to an outside device, meaning it'll need either public addressing or it'll need a proxy. Does it support a proxy?
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah.
Okay. Or it'll need, to be NATed if it's V4.
No, absolutely. So in this particular case, yeah, it will. It will require internet access because I'm talking to OpenAI. If you had an on-prem model that you were talking to, then you wouldn't, right? So it's kind of those deployment models we talked about a little bit, and they'll evolve. They'll evolve over time. Yeah.
So in the model that you're showing right now, it requires external connectivity to be open, at least outbound in a security policy, but it's possible to bring that inbound if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Correct. Yeah.